Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, story changers, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Lives Matter mini-series here on the Author Your Life podcast. This is going to be our final episode in this mini-series, and we have got a deep session lined up for you today. I'm delighted to introduce you to Charletta Spicer. Charletta is the speaker and coach for her business, Another Level Coaching and Consulting. Her coaching specialty is life and relationships, and the main emphasis is on women's empowerment. She also has a business consulting portion of her company which focuses on taking entrepreneurs to the next level. Additionally, she is the president of Quality of Life, a non-profit whose mission is to strengthen families. Charletta is also an aspiring author, and her educational background is in business management and theology. In this interview today, you will learn you need more than plan A and plan B, why you will lose friends when you start to improve, how your expectations for someone influence their actions, and why it's easy to exploit people who've been taught to hate themselves. You're going to learn this and so much more in this interview with Charletta Spicer.
It's funny because I didn't realize that my client is really me, but at different stages of my life. And it's so weird that it came to me as an epiphany. I started my official journey of doing this. It wasn't some story where you see people where they just take a big lump sum out of their 401k and they say, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to live out my dreams. I kind of went kicking and screaming because I was like, I don't want to do that because I need a paycheck. I didn't do it willingly. I did it, unfortunately, David, I did it because when my mom passed, I looked at my life and I said, this is not how I want to live. This is not how I want to be remembered. Because I thought to myself, my mom worked too hard for me not to be great. I grew up seeing my mom serve people. I grew up knowing what it was to volunteer. I grew up knowing that that's who we were. We didn't have a lot. We didn't grow up with money, but I grew up where she taught us how to take what we had, and she took us with her. Every place she went, we were right there with her. So if she were serving the homeless, we were right there serving right alongside of her. And so that's what I did. But I did mine on the weekend. I took my kids with me. And then in the summertime, I would take my kids with me to volunteer. But unlike my mom, I'm like, well, I'll volunteer on my time off. So when my mom passed, the turning point for me was at her funeral. I saw this guy that was kneeling down at her casket. And from appearances, you would think they really wouldn't have much in common. He was a younger white guy, and I'll never forget it. He had this red polo shirt on, and I kept looking at him, and he just was bawling. He was sobbing. And I asked my sister, I said, who is he? And she said, that's the pizza delivery guy. And I just thought it was really strange that he was so overwhelmed at my mom's passing. But we knew my mom was great. And we knew that so many people love my mom, because at my mom's funeral, there were so many different people there, all different types of people, all different backgrounds. I mean, the red hat ladies, the different groups, just all different types of people. And so afterwards, I had a chance to talk to him, and I asked him, just his story. And he said to me, he said, your mom was the only one that took the time to talk to me. He said he didn't have family that he kept in touch with. He said that she would take the time to pray with him, and she would just take the time to just see how he was doing. And whenever the call came in for her building, he would take that call because he knew he had a chance to go see Miss Ruby. And, David, to me, that stood out in my mind. And I thought, that's legacy to me, because I thought, wow. So when I got back to work as an insurance adjuster and workers' compensation, one of the most stressful things you can do in life ever, because and I'm grateful. Don't get me wrong. I was so grateful for the opportunity to make good money to take care of my children. I'm not going to downplay the fact that God blessed me to take good care of my children. But it was a stressful job. And I can just remember days when I would just sit there just like, oh my gosh. Ugh. And I did well at it, but because it was so against my natural bent of having to be so aggressive and having to listen to people try to scheme, and then having to listen to employers. You tell him I said no. I don't care if he's hurt. Tell him no, he's not going to have surgery. But then having to be this mean, nasty, and, it was so against who I was. But I managed to do well at my job because I kept my numbers good. I didn't make mistakes. And I always had bosses that recognized the fact that my work was good. So I moved up the ranks. But I wasn't happy, though. And I just could look at my desk. And when I talked to that guy, I looked at my desk and I'm like, this is not what I want to be remembered for. What are they going to say? Oh, wow, she really did handle those claims. Oh, wow, look at her desk. And I didn't have a story where some people would say, well, I hated my boss. My boss is such a jerk. I hate him. I can't wait to get out of here. We had a great relationship. My boss, David, I was the favorite. I was and so when I would tell my boss, I'm like, look, this is just a little bit much for me. I'm thinking of getting out of this. Oh, no, you can't leave. The client loves you. They don't want anybody else on their account. They specifically asked for you. Just to give you a story, David, this is how much of a rock star I was. Not to toot my own horn, but this is how it went with me. The biggest account in my office, when we went out to get that account, my boss, he took all of us out on the service call. So we go out, we're standing by the elevators, and, we're just waiting for the client to come out. And I'm just looking at my purse, putting my things away and everything. And they're talking and they're making their introductions. And I had my head down. And so I look up and my boss introduces me. And he says the lady's name and he goes, well, this is Charletta. And so I look up and the client goes, Charletta? And I go, oh. And she comes up and she goes, I didn't know you were going to be on my account. Oh my God. I didn't know. You didn't tell me that Charletta was going to be on my account. Oh my God. We didn't even have to meet. And so my boss goes, you know Charletta? And she's like, yeah. And so my boss is looking at me like, And I'm like, I don't know. But David, what happened was I ended up meeting this lady somewhere else. And this lady who was in charge of the decision making, the whole meeting, she's just like, oh my goodness, Charletta. She didn't talk to hardly anybody else in the meeting. We're at this boardroom table and she's just like, oh my goodness. So Charletta, oh my gosh, Charletta. And so the whole day we're back in the office and they're just like, Charletta. And so my boss is just thrilled. He's just pleased as punch because we got this great big account and my coworkers are teasing me. They're just like, oh, I guess we could just thank Charletta then because we get so I didn't have the story that my boss hated me and I hated him and I gotta leave. The work was stressful, but my coworkers knew if we wanted ice cream, they knew who to send in. Charletta, go ahead. Office can order ice cream. Send her in. Send Charletta in to ask. So I had a good working relationship. I made good money. But internally, I wasn't happy. And then on the weekends, when I volunteered, and I'd see the little brown babies run up to me, and their eyes would light up because they think, wait a minute, she looks like me. And I could tell what they were thinking. They were thinking, if she looks like me and I'm here, I could do what she does because the other people that are here, meaning the volunteers, they don't look like me. So maybe I can't do that. But now that I see her here, if she's there, maybe I could do what she does, or maybe I could be where she is because I see her there. And David, that's what's so important about representation. That's part of why I'm here today on your show to say why Black Lives Matters, because that's the language that I want to change. Because I think that we've gotten so caught up in the rhetoric and the language that we're missing the point. We're missing, it's almost like it's become a red herring. It's like people have gotten so bent set on not recognizing the importance of a person and their value that they've decided, I'm going to take this phrase and I'm going to get so focused on this phrase that I'm going to ignore the person. And I'm going to argue with you for 3 hours on this phrase so that I don't have to recognize the value of this person. And meanwhile, there's a person that's being ignored. And my job is I want to get the focus back on that person, because to me, it's that person that's important, not the phrase. And I might catch flack for saying this, but David, I don't even care about the organization. I really don't. I don't even know who runs it. I've never donated a dime. And I might even catch flack for saying that. I don't know who's behind it. I hear conspiracy theorists say, oh, George Soros, he runs it. The Illuminati, they're behind it. They're anti-AFD. Who. There's so many conspiracy theories out there, and it's just like, I don't care. I don't care. All I care about is That little girl that runs up to me when I'm volunteering, I care about her life. I care about my 13-year-old daughter. I care about my 20-year-old son. I care about the kid that's on his way to college. I was looking at this video last week. This young man, he rescued another young man from a burning car. And David, when I say modern day hero, this young man reminded me of the Black men that I grew up around in my neighborhood. They didn't wear suits. They didn't wear ties. They were just, T-shirts, khakis, dirty work clothes or whatever, steel toe boots, grungy, My dad worked as a butcher, in a meat packing place. Blue collar type men, but they worked hard and they all had like a serious work ethic. They weren't real big on I love you. They weren't real big on it's going to be okay. But you knew they cared and you knew they loved you because they took care of business. My mom was the type, her job was comb your hair, make sure your homework was done. My dad was the type, my job is making sure the lights are on, the bills are paid. My mom, she would say maybe one or two times, the water heater isn't working right. You didn't even know if he really heard her or not. He'd look up, he'd stand up, look around, and then he'd head down to the basement. Next thing you know, you hear him tinkering, ting, 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 ting. If he couldn't fix it, then you'd hear him on the phone, and then you'd see somebody come and fix it, or he would fix it. But the next thing you know, it was fixed. If there was a problem with the car, I hear my mom say something about, I think, the oil needs to be changed. It's kind of smoking. It's doing something. I don't know. It's making this noise. He'd look around. Same thing, Dave. He'd get up. He'd head out the door. You hear him out there tinkering or whatever. There wasn't a lot of this, but it was done. It was done. So modern day, maybe there wasn't a lot of communication, but he showed his love by what he did. Things were taken care of. They had their system. This guy who rescued this guy in this video, it was amazing to see. I'm going to tag you in it so you can see this. I watched him, and the young guy that was in the car, he was stuck with the seatbelt, and he's tugging. And I heard, and the young guy was maybe like 20, but the guy who was pulling him out, maybe in his 40s, maybe, or late 30s. And I heard somebody in the crowd, because the car is smoking, and I heard somebody yell out, "Leave him," as if to say the car is about to blow up. But David, it's almost like I could see that young man in the car being my son. And the fact that this man kept tugging at him, because I thought to myself, I would I would hope that someone would keep tugging at that guy if that were my son. And I thought to myself, I don't know what it is in a person that makes you let go and decide, well, I got to leave him. Or what it is in you that decides, I'm not leaving him. I don't know what clicks inside of you. But whatever clicks inside of you, to me, what it said was, that was inside the men that I grew up around. And that's what I saw in him. So that's what I saw growing up. So that's why I'm so passionate about being a champion for Black men, because I know the greatness that I see. So it's not hard for me to speak up. But what happens is, David, the men that I know, they fly up under the radar. They're not out here tooting their own horn. They go to work, they go home, they do like my dad. They eat dinner, they may go play basketball. They may have, kind of like you, they may just go walking. It's like your lifestyle. You know, just living in their own little great little world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they have a quiet life. But that doesn't mean they're not out here. But the world that we live in likes to do this thing where I'm going to take the sensationalism and I'm going to have this narrative. And I'm not saying that the narrative or the pictures that they paint aren't true. I'm not saying that at all. Because I'll be the first one, David. And I think sometimes the problem is that I'm going to say this very carefully. If you don't admit both sides of an issue, there are people that won't listen to any of your conversation. And sometimes that is the problem that we face. Because I will tell people without any reservation, just like I have people in certain parts of the city, my cousins, that I don't deal with, I'm sure you have cousins that you don't deal with either.
Yeah.
Let's just keep it real. And David, I have those conversations with my white friends, and that's how we're able to talk. Because until we get real, a lot of times that's why we can't have these conversations. Because you have a lot of people that, because of the shame or because of whatever reasons, when you don't want to face a particular part of your culture, you have people that don't want to hear any of your conversation. And that's where the conversation stops. But I'll be the first one to say, when I go to my family reunions, my sister, she laughs at me. We sit down and we joke because we have the haves and we have the have-nots. We have the have-nots going to college. We have the have-nots, and we have the have-nots give a care. And I'm not putting my address down there because if your house will be empty before you get home. and that's no joke. Okay, I love everybody, but let's just keep it real. And it's okay because you have people in your family like that too. So I don't feel bad because for every ghetto, there's a trailer park. Let's just keep it real.
Yeah.
Let's just say what it is, because it's not a race thing. It's a mindset thing. It's not a Black thing. It's not a white thing. It's a mindset thing. Poverty has never been about race. It's about people. It's not about the color of your skin. And until we stop attaching it to a certain race, we can't talk about it, because then the whole argument and the whole conversation shuts down. And that's why people can't be open and honest about it, because you keep thinking, well, I can't say anything because I don't want to be offensive. Well, why not? You have cousins like this too. Why can't we talk about it? Like, we can talk about it, because you don't want to talk about it because you keep thinking that it's just me, when it's not. It's not just my culture that does this. It's a us problem. It's not just my problem. And until we work together to fix it for our children and make this world a better place for our children, that's when it's going to be better. So that's when I made that switch, David. When I made the switch to say, my mom, when she left here, it's almost like, I like to say, I think my mom on her way to heaven was like, okay, God, I need to leave my strength and give it to her when I leave here, because it's almost like when she left, I just stopped caring what people thought. I did not care. I sat at that desk and I thought, I can't do this. And I like to tell people when I'm coaching them, once you make the decision and you say, I'm available, it's like whatever you believe, whether you're a Christian or whatever your faith is, whatever you align yourself with, it falls in place, because it really becomes about a decision. And that is when everything started to just fall in place. Because at that point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't in good conscience sit here and think that this is okay and do this and be okay with just pushing papers, and because anybody could do this is what I kept thinking. Mm-hmm. Anybody could do this, but not everybody can touch people. Not everybody can change lives. Not everybody can do what it is that you do. And once I decided that, that's when everything turned around. And I began to meet one person after another. And then, kind of like with our story, one person would introduce me to another, and then another person would introduce me to another. And I like to tell people that once you get on your path, it's like everything that you need is on your path. The people that you need, the resources that you need, the connections, your peace, everything is on that path. But if you're over here on this trail with all the rocks falling down on you and all the stuff coming at you and the branches hitting you in the face, and you just think, why is it so hard? Because that's not your path, and it's going to be hard. But the minute you get on your path, it's just like, this is really easy. Yeah, because it's your path. Yeah. And it almost seems like it's too easy. Well, yeah, because it's your path, because it's just for you. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I should do this a long time ago, but.
Mm-hmm. So for a bit of context, Charletta, when your mom died, how old were you at this point?
Well, I'm in my 50s, David. So I'm 54 now. So this hasn't been that long ago.
Oh, so this is recent. This wasn't a while ago that your mother died.
Yeah, this has only been like in the last 3 years.
Yeah. You speak with such authority and wisdom. I just kind of felt like this seemed like a long time ago.
No, no. Well, I've always done, not always, but the volunteer work, I've been doing volunteer work for probably the last 15, I would say maybe the last 15, 20 years, but only on the weekends, during the summer. I've always been that volunteer, the back to school programs, never all the way. I've never been fully committed to it. Just only, like I said, just in the summer, using vacation time or on the weekends, but never fully committed to it like I am now.
Mm-hmm. I think your story will resonate with a lot of listeners, Charletta, because I feel a lot of people have this sort of sensation of like, I can do more with my life. Like there could be somebody else doing this job or this role that I'm in, but I could be doing something else that's making better use of my skills, better use of my experience. For someone who is listening and they're kind of feeling this connection, do you have any words of guidance or advice that could help them kind of make that jump? And as you were talking about, you've got the path that you're not supposed to be on and the path that you're on, some guidance to maybe help them take the steps down the path that they're meant to be walking down.
I think the thing that helped me was if you're feeling uncertain about it, one thing that you can do just to feel a little bit more certain too, because I'm all about balance. I've never been one of those name it, claim it, jump out into the open Christians. I'm not a send me a dime and I'll send you a prayer cloth Christian. I believe in exercising wisdom. Okay. Not saying that miracles don't happen, because I believe in miracles, but I believe in using wisdom also. One thing that helped me a lot was there are a lot of industries where you can just do contract work. So one of the first things that I did was, because sometimes I think it's important to let people know that there are levels and there are stages, because you have to use wisdom. Because sometimes I think that people do leave out steps and they kind of make it seem like they just jump right out there. One thing I did was, when I did my research, I went to doing contract work. So I didn't just say, my mama would not be happy with this. I'm out of here, and walk out of my job. Okay. No. My children like crab legs and they like to eat. So no, they would be very unhappy with me because they don't like ramen noodles and they don't like they just be like, look, mama, we understand that you had an epiphany, but we don't have any food in the refrigerator. No. So what I did was that I looked at doing contract. So with contract work, you're a 1099 worker. You can have employers put you on their payroll, or you go in as self-employed. There are a lot of options. You can set up your own health insurance. You can set up your own retirement. You basically just set up everything yourself, everything that an employer would set up for you. You can look in, like, for example, what I did was, being in the insurance industry, I looked to see what job openings there were. And if there was a position open, instead of applying for that position as one of their employees, I would contact them and say, can I come in as a contractor and I can keep that desk afloat for you for this rate? And I negotiated. So the benefit to them, they didn't have to pay out benefits. I wasn't their employee. So they saved money where they didn't have to pay out benefits, and that work didn't get behind. And I could provide them references. And of course, because if you stay on top of your work in an industry, you likely know someone that they know. So you find someone that they know in that industry. Use your contacts, look in LinkedIn and find out someone that they know and say, can you call over there and say that you know me, whatever. And then basically that keeps some money flowing in until you can start getting you some clients in the area of work that you're passionate about. So that's like a practical way of keeping some money coming in, because, David, I'm all about the coins now, because there's a way. And see, that's the thing too. We all have natural gifts and talents. And one thing I figured out that I was kind of naturally good at, and that was like the idea that I just told you about, was coming up with like little ideas like that. Because my ex-husband, he used to tease me, and he would say, man, girl, you always got a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. You don't just have a plan B. You got a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Oh, Lord have mercy. And so that's how my mind works. So you have to take little things that you're good at, and sometimes think about what people say to you. Think about what people may jokingly say to you that you're good at. Take those little things and use them and find a way to make money at them. And that can be your way of getting out of that job that's so stressful to you. And it can just be your way out of that, because it's just not healthy. And then with us all being in this virtual world now, especially, I would just say too, especially for women who have children, school-age children, now more than ever is the time to branch out. Because with the way that the children now are being placed in this virtual learning program, you have to branch out now, because now's the time. Because I cannot even imagine, if my children were younger, having to try to figure out childcare and pay that expense, or trying to work remotely and then having to figure out their curriculum while I'm trying to focus on work. That right there in itself would just be, I can figure it out if I'm doing my work, because I'm on my time. But if I'm on someone else's time, it just seems like it would just be a lot more stressful. Because if I'm on my business, I can kind of make up for that time. I can stay up a little bit later after they go to bed, and but you know how that goes when you're on someone else's time. They're counting your keystrokes. They may have their camera on you, and they're just like, oh, what's she doing now? And you don't want to risk losing your job just because you're trying to take care of your kids, So now's the time to try to figure some things out.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about knowing your gifts and finding your gifts, Charletta. I remember you were talking about when you were working in insurance and you were like the star performer. What do you think were some of the skills and traits that you had that made you a star performer?
You know, it's so simple, but I did contract work for quite a while when I was married because I wanted more of a flexible schedule. When my children were younger, because I wanted to spend more time with them. And I would go back to the same employers. And one of the employers, I sat down and I talked to him, and he said, you know, Charlotta, he said, I was so glad you were available. He said, when we needed someone. I said, oh, okay. I said, thanks. He said, you know why? He said, you know why I always ask for you? I said, why? I said, because you're going to give me all this work. And so we kind of started laughing about it. He says, no. And I was sitting in his office. He said, because you are so pleasant to work around. He said, I know that if you're in the office, he said, I don't care if it's raining. He said, I don't care what's going on. He says, you will not allow the people around you to start getting into this funk. He said, you keep the section around you in such a positive attitude. He says, you won't join in. He said, you won't join in. He said, I just love your positive attitude. He says, you will not join in. And David, I hadn't even noticed that he noticed that. But a lot of it is just about relationships. It's about building these relationships with people and not burning bridges, because you never know who you're going to need in the future. It's about protecting your name, building relationships, doing what you say you're going to do. If you can't do it, and these are things that I learned early on when I first started in the insurance industry. I learned that if you can't do what you're going to do for a customer or client, just call them back and say, I'm not going to have the answer for you, but here's when I will have that answer. I'll call you back tomorrow by 3 and let you know what we're going to do. And what I found out from that is that just works wonders for people, because you know what's going on, but they don't know what's going on. So even if, for example, you're working on something and you have good news for them, a lot of people think, well, oh, they're going to be so happy to hear this. They're going to be, because I'm working this problem out, and they're actually going to get $500 more than what they thought they were going to get. On the other end of that, I haven't even heard from them. They didn't even call me. I don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. It's like that in business. It's like that in relationships. It's like that in life. It's like that in friendships. People on the other side, if it's an overthinker, if it's a person who always assumes the worst, like, you don't know what this person, it's about communication. So if you can just put this person's mind at ease by just communicating, hey, I don't have an answer for you, but I'll call you Thursday by 4. It stops it. It stops them from thinking. And that's a trick that I learned like early on. They can go on to do something else. In relationships, it means that, you know what? I don't want to get married. That's not what I'm on. That ain't what I'm trying to do. Stops it. I can go on to somebody else. It stops it. You know what I'm saying? It's like in friendships, it's, you know what? I'm not going to make it. I don't even feel like going tonight. It stops it. I don't have to keep getting ready. I don't have to keep getting dressed. Instead of it being, I find out when I'm on my way to your house that you're not going. Friendships have been ruined all because you didn't pick up the phone just to call me, and you assume that I would understand, and it's about communication. And that is one of the biggest tips when I mentor single moms. That's one of the biggest tips that I try to give, like, communicate, talk. It works for co-parenting, it works for relationships, it works for friendships. You have to stop assuming what other people think, because you don't know, and sometimes it's not always what you think. That's the advice that I would give to people.
Bring it back to talking about paths. You've got this very sort of visual idea of going along the wrong path and the branches and the rocks and everything. For you, how did you identify what your right path was? Was it something that you knew? Was it something you had to kind of work through and discover? Do you want to share with us a little bit more of how you came to finding your path?
David, I think that instinctively, when you want to know something, if you ask, you will get answers. I believe that spiritually, as a Christian, if I pray, God will let me know. However, whatever you believe, whether you believe that the universe will answer you, or most of the time, if you really seek to know something, you will find it. Because if you think about it, it's only when we start really searching do we find what we're looking for. When we really get honest with ourselves, and when we start on this quest for, this isn't enough, there's got to be more, I'm not. And it's almost like when you're Googling, and you click on one thing, and then it leads you to something else, and it leads you to something else. It's almost like that is what I kind of equate it to. I believe that when you've made up in your mind and you've made a decision. So for me, it was because I think within your heart when you're serious. And I think God knows when you're serious and when you're not. Because sometimes we can say we're ready, and we're just like talking. We're just like, I'm not ready. But for me, I think that moment with seeing that guy, because there were plenty of times I sat at my desk and I'm like, I'm tired of this. But the action was, I'm still online shopping. I'm like, I'm so sick of this. But here I am sitting there, add to cart. Oh my goodness, I just ordered all this stuff online. I'm not serious, David. Because if I were serious, I wouldn't just still keep shopping. Like, I'm not fed up. I haven't reached a point where I'm really fed up. It's almost like when you're in a relationship where you're tired of somebody, but you're still calling them, where you're just like, I'm tired of him. I'm tired of him. And then the minute he texts you, it's like, okay, well, what time do you want to meet? If he calls me, I'm not even answering. Hello. It's like, you're not tired of him yet. Because when you're tired of him, you're going to block him. When you're tired of him, you're going to unfriend him. When you're tired of him, you're going to unfollow him. There's a lot of stuff you're going to do to follow through when you're finally sick and tired. Like when you're tired of that weight, you're going to throw all the junk food away. You're going to clean out that refrigerator. Like, it's like something clicks and you're tired of yourself. You're sick and tired. So I think when you get to that point, because for me, it wasn't just sitting at that desk. I started on just a whole journey, David. I sat there and I thought, this is it. I changed the way that I was eating. I went on a whole journey. I went home. I thought, because my mom passed away of like heart complications. I started eating different. I started putting on my headphones, listening to music every day, because I thought I've never been able to stick to anything as far as activity wise. I set boundaries. I told my friends, I'm not sitting on this phone with you guys. I'm not doing that. I started exercising every day. David, I lost over a year and a half. I lost 60 pounds. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Because at that point, David, all of it changed. Everything changed because when I set boundaries, and this is part of the book that I'm writing, because another thing that I wanted people to know in this, that I want people to know in this book, is that it's not all peaches and cream, because the thing that I didn't expect was I didn't expect to lose friends.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that part. I was thinking that people would be happy that I finally found my way and that I finally was able to get control of my life, and that I was finally happy that I was out of this miserable state as far as my job, as far as, just being overworked and overweight and overstressed and, and just not being who I knew I could be. Because what I realized, David, was that the people that are closest to you, a lot of times, they see your gifts. They know. And a lot of times when people benefit from what you have to offer, there's a selfishness and there's a covetousness. There's this thing where it's just like, well, I got my own personal genie. I got my own personal Oprah right here. And so if you start figuring out who you are, then I might not be able to call you every day with my problems. So I don't really know if I want you to know who you are. And it's the weirdest thing, because it's like, well, wait a minute. You should be happy for me. And that doesn't always happen, because a lot of times people figure out, well, once you figure out who you are, that's going to cut off my access to you, because now I don't have unlimited access to you. Because wait a minute, now I don't get to like complain to you for like an hour and a half about Tyrone every other day. I mean, that's just reality. So that kind of surprised me. Mm-hmm. It kind of surprised me, because when you set boundaries, the people that benefit from you not having boundaries, they push back. They start to push back, and it's just like, well, I guess you're just so busy now. Well, I told you I got to work out. I'm going to work out. Like, you should be happy that I'm taking care of my heart. But the people that love you, they support you. And they're looking at you like, I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad. Keep it up. And you're like, wow. So yeah. And so as far as your path, once you make that decision, I think the way that you know is because something clicks and your actions start to support it. That's how you know that this isn't just a good idea. It's more so this is something divine that's leading you on your path. And I think that it's your desire, it's your answer to your prayer. It's basically from you saying, okay, I'm available. And it sets that in motion, because basically you're tired. And whether it's prompted by, and sometimes it's prompted by a few things. It's prompted by disappointment. It's prompted by death, disease. It's prompted by a few things, but with each one of us, it's different. You know, for me, it was that, because I think I was able to do things being motivated from my mom's death that I wasn't able to do for myself. And even still today, that's what drives me, because I do it because I think to myself, this is what makes my mom proud.
I think that was such an important point that you raised about people feeling threatened when you change and when you improve. And I think that's one of the biggest obstacles that everyone faces when they start making changes in their lives. And so many of the people listening to this will either be going through that right now, or will be looking back and saying, absolutely, I went through that. I know in Australia and New Zealand, they call it tall poppy syndrome, where if one poppy grows above the others, rather than every poppy saying, oh, why don't we grow that tall? They say, well, let's chop that poppy down so it's back at the same height as us. And it's just this horrible glitch that I think we have in our psychology. And I think it's rife in UK culture in particular. Actually, I think in the US, I think you guys are actually a little bit better at this and a bit more aspirational. But in UK culture, there's this horrible, like, I want you to be doing as badly as me, so I don't feel so bad about myself. And it's just, I think it's totally the wrong way to go about things. If you have a friend or a family member who's doing something, you know, meaningful or productive or inspiring with their life, does that not make you say, well, hey, if my friend can do it, if my family member can do it, why can't I do it as well? I don't get that. Well, I understand that mentality. I just don't resonate with it or agree with it.
Exactly. Because I cheer for my friends. I'm so happy when my friends have accomplishments. I am. I cheer for them. But your circle gets smaller. It gets smaller. It does.
Better, possibly. I think the quality can improve.
It does. But it does force you to be around like-minded people that understand you, because for everybody that leaves, you understand that everybody can't be a part of your journey, but that's okay. Because I think it makes room for the people that are a part of your journey.
Yeah. Shall we use this transition of people feeling threatened to move into talking about Black Lives Matter, where perhaps there are also people who are feeling threatened by others? And I want to start this in a way that's kind of unique to me and yourself, Charletta. This kind of something that you shared in my Facebook group and in a speech that you did, that, like, it's one of the most impactful things that have come out of this period, actually. And it made me think back to when I was preparing to leave home and go away to, well, we call it university in the UK, you call it college in the US. And I remember in, like, my last year of high school, my dad's preparing me to leave home and move away So like he taught me how to cook, he taught me how to iron, how to budget. When you were preparing your son to go away to college, would you like to share some of the things that you did to prepare him for leaving home?
Well, actually, to go back a little bit, it wasn't to go away to college. It was younger than that. It was when you start driving, and maybe a little bit younger, but definitely around driving age. So 15, 16. There's the talk, which for young Black men, there are many talks. That's just one of them. The talk that we give young Black men as parents is the talk that we have to stay safe and to make it home safely when it comes to driving, when it comes to interacting with the police officers. Basically, it's a talk to be respectful. It's a talk to keep your hands out in the open. It is a talk whether or not you've done anything wrong, the goal is to make it home. The goal is to say, yes, sir. It isn't to be right. It's to basically make it home. If the officer says, well, you were doing this or you were doing that, it's basically, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. And to make sure that there is no room for a misunderstanding. Make sure that your hands are where he can see them. And to stay calm, because a lot of times your phone, whether your phone is shiny or whatever you have, it can be mistaken for a weapon. Sudden movements can be mistaken for you're reaching for something. Make sure that if he says, hands on your head, you put your hands on your head. If he says hands on the steering wheel, you put your hands on the steering wheel. But the thing about that, David, is even that may not be enough. I mean, we've seen that even nowadays, even that isn't enough. So I've had situations where, if he's walking home, just if an officer says, "Do you live around here?" Just answer the questions and just, don't feel like you have to prove a point. Don't, just answer the questions. So there are a lot of people that will say, because I've had coworkers, well, he shouldn't have to, and he doesn't have to tell them anything. And he should just tell them. And I'm like, that's cute. Yeah. Okay. That might be nice for your son. So, but not my son. So that's nice. And I understand they mean well, but no. His job is to make it home safely. Because sometimes it's just people mean well, but at the end of the day, it's his job to make it home safely. It's something that parents like me, we've understood it for as long as I can remember. Because the irony is that I just remember my parents had talks with me and my siblings. They weren't the same talks, but they had the same tone. But they were just different talks. And I'm sure my mom and dad had the same talks, but they were with the same, same tone, but just different, the same tone, different talks. But it's just something, and there are other talks. There's going to the mall, which the going to the mall talk is no hands in your pockets, no running away from the direction of the store. And It's almost like, in this weird kind of way, my son, he's 20 now, so he kind of jokes about it now. He's like, I know, Mom. No wearing a hoodie, even though your hoodie has a hood on it. No putting on the hoodie, because I don't know why the hoodie has a hood on it if you can't put the hoodie on the hood, because it's called a hoodie though, right? But don't put the hoodie on the hoodie because it's a hoodie, So he just kind of jokes about it, because what are you going to do? So we just know these things. Can't do what your friends do. We know that. Let's see. No, your car can't be full of people. So there's just several talks that we have. And the irony of it all is that I've never gotten so much as a call from the school on my son. And there's never been a call from the school. He's not a perfect kid. No kid is, but I've never worried about him picking his friends. He's a laid back kid. That's usually like the only thing that I've ever really been concerned with when it comes to him, which is so funny, because I'm like, okay, but whenever he leaves, and if he's out, and when it's time for him to come home from work, I don't fall all the way to sleep until I hear him come in. I hear the door click, and then instinctively, that's when I fall off into a deep sleep, because I know he's made it home safe. So it shouldn't be like that, but it is. So that's why when I talk to people, I try to appeal to them in a sense that if this were your son, think about it. Because sometimes you have to look at it like that. You have to look at it as if, think about it, if this were your son, then maybe you can muster up the compassion. Think about it in terms of, what if this were my son? Like, imagine if I had to picture this. Because even like with the whole virtual thing now, you've got parents in an uproar. Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? Like, they're frantic now because they're worried about their kids' education and how their kids are going to do, because maybe their kids aren't going to do so well because their kids are going to be home, and maybe they aren't going to learn as well being at home. Well, think of the irony now, David. My daughter, she's 13. My daughter is a whiz kid, okay? So think about this. Fortunately, she's a whiz kid. She's an A student. I don't worry about her. I mean, I'll go through her work. I'll check her grades, and I'll make sure she's doing her stuff virtually. But it's not even something I think about. So do you see like the irony of how I don't even think twice about her being virtual, because it's not something that affects me, because I think to myself, she'll be fine. But for the parent whose kid who's 13, who hates school, who won't have to do the work, who may be a good kid, but just is like, I don't understand this math. But they're freaking out because even though they're a good kid, they just may not quite get it. But that parent may not be the best at explaining it, or they may not have the resources to they may have a job that requires a lot of attention. Like the parents that work 12, 14 hours, who have kids that are being looked at by the police. So now it's like, maybe since you're in that situation, can you kind of see how these moms feel who worry about their kids every day? Like, that's through no fault of your own. So maybe you can see how some parents are worried about their kids every day and how it's become a way of life, So I don't know. I try to use real life situations just to get people to think,
Mhm. Yeah, I really appreciate hearing about just this insight and these stories and the things that you've told your son, because it was something that wasn't even on my radar, and I was aware of, as I said, when my dad was preparing me to leave home. I didn't have all of these talks. I've never had these protocols and these rules that I kind of have to follow. And you might look at, say, me and your son, and in a lot of ways we're quite comparable. We're university educated. I mean, your son hasn't got his degree yet, but I'm sure he will. And you might say, oh, well, they're both the same. There's no inequality. There's no difference in opportunity. But the way that you kind of described the things you've had to tell your son, I think that's when I really understood what white privilege is. And it's this kind of intangible, or not so intangible, kind of abstract concept, but that's very real at the same time. And sort of objectively, you might look at things and say, oh, they're exactly the same. But when you start to pick at it a little bit more, you realize the differences that are there. And I think that's something that I've certainly learned and become a lot more aware of at this time. It's you've got your overt and objective sort of obvious racism, and then you've got all of this subtle stuff that I know as a white person I haven't really been aware of, but for the Black community, they've been aware of this for a long time, and finally it's kind of becoming a little bit more sort of there's more mainstream awareness around it now.
Yeah, it is. And, and another thing I just wanted to get across as far as Black Lives Matters, I think that we have to make more of an effort when it comes to the corporations and the bigger entities. I think that it's great as far as, and what I mean by that is like the sports teams. I think it's great for a professional sports team to show solidarity with t-shirts that says Black Lives Matters. But I think if you want to say that Black people are important, then go back to hiring Black players. If you're a corporation and you put on your website that Black Lives Matters, basically all you're saying to me is that my dollars are important to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you want to say to me that I'm important to you, then your boardroom should have some representation. Your marketing department should have some representation. And not just Black people, but if you're saying Black Lives Matters, it should have Black people in your marketing department and in your boardroom. But you should also have some diversity. You should have all different types of people. Because David, this is 2020. And I don't believe that you can't find all types of people to hire anymore. I'm sorry. I just don't believe it anymore. I don't believe that you can't find different types of people to hire. So it's time out for these companies and these corporations to stop this facade of pretending like they can't hire different types of people. and to stop pacifying us with banners and slogans and things on their website and company statements and things on their, just PR statements, pretty much. If it's really important to you, it should show in your hiring practices. It should show in your talent. And when I say this, I'm not just talking about, I think it should start with Black people, because you're saying Black Lives Matter. So don't get me wrong. Don't just go hire a whole bunch of, I'm sorry if this sounds bad, but don't just go hire a bunch of Hispanic and Asian people and then turn around and be like, see, look what we did. No, you said Black Lives Matter. So you start with honoring that. Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, hire everybody, because I'm sure everybody's applying at your company. Stop pretending like all these people aren't applying at your company, because I know they are, because they're in colleges. They're all getting degrees. You can't make me believe that they're not all hiring. They're not all applying at your company. I don't believe that anymore. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, but not in 2020. I'm sorry. Everybody isn't just applying at Google and Microsoft. So we've got to do better. We've got to do better. The young people, they have a pretty good handle on it. Young people, that's kind of who we need to listen to sometimes, because young people are just more honest about it. The young people are the ones that are yelling at their parents, and parents are kind of getting upset with them. But it's kind of who we raise them to be. We raise them to be honest. We've put them on these sports teams with diversity. We've put them in schools, and we put them in settings that are diverse. And we force them into these settings that say, we believe in inclusion. But then when they come home, it's just like, shh. And it's like, no, like, this is what we've asked them to do. And this is who we've taught them to be. And so now they're kind of rising up, David, and they're kind of throwing it back at their parents. So I think their parents kind of need to listen to them.
Do you have any experiences of racism? It could be yours or it could be somebody else's that you feel it would be important to share with our audience today.
I think that most of my experiences with racism are kind of subtle. They happen routinely. It happens mostly when I'm in a work environment where my decisions are questioned until they're said by someone else. So they kind of happen the same way that sexism happens, where if a woman says something and then it's kind of disregarded until a man says it. For example, I may say something and it's just like, what do you think, Bob? I kind of think we should. Okay, well then, yeah, all right, well then let's go with that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's kind of a thing where you can't prove that my ideas and suggestions weren't taken because I said it, or because they weren't taken because I'm Black, or because maybe I'm a woman. But a lot of times it's kind of iffy. Then there are situations where maybe statements that are made. For example, the neighborhood that I live in is, well, actually, I'm the only Black person on my street. And which I think is kind of funny sometimes. Like when I bought my house, my realtor is, I'll tell you about this story. My realtor is white. And when I bought my house, we were standing out front, and my neighbor, who's older, he came up to her and he said, "Congratulations" to her. He says, "Oh, congratulations. Welcome to the neighborhood." And David, I just have this thing where I always joke about when white people are upset with other white people. My is like, there's like nobody that gets more upset than when white people are sick of white people.
That's so true, actually. I know exactly what you mean.
Oh my goodness. I laughed so hard. She just yelled at him. She goes, "This is not she's the homeowner, and you will not disrespect her like that." And she just started yelling at her, like right in my front yard. I said, "Oh gosh." I called my friends. I said, "Girl, these white folks out here going off on each other." I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "She just went off on him." I said, she told him, "You will not disrespect her like that. How dare you? And she's my friend." It's like, I was like, "Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy." I was like, "Calm down, calm down, calm down." Time out, time out, time out. It was just so funny. And he's like, I'm sorry. I didn't know. And then he looks at me, he goes, and he didn't make it any better. He goes, "Well, how old are you?" I'm like, oh my God, what does that have to do with anything? And so I go, how old am I? And so I said, "Do I need to fill out an application for something?" I said, what do you need my age for?" He says, "You just don't look really old." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, nice to meet you." Like that has anything to do with anything. And so, but I mean, they're nice now, but it was just so funny. But I still get questions. When people come to make repairs, I just joke it. I just jokingly play it off. I open my door and they look down at like the address and they stare and they go, and they look at the name and Charletta, right? And then I said, "Hold on, I'll get her." And then I close the door and then I come back and I say, "Yes." I said, "Come on in." And then, they laugh it off or whatever. And I said, "Here, you come on in." I said, "Because you're the one, you might be a killer." I said, "You're looking at me like I don't live here." I'm like, "You might be somebody off of Criminal Minds. So come on in." And, and I just I jokingly laugh it off, but I'm thinking, stop acting like I don't belong here. I'm like, this isn't 1950. So I get little things like that, but I don't get anything that's harsh and like in my face, mean. I haven't gotten anything like that. No, just a little subtle.
You've provided kind of a contrasted opinion on Black Lives Matter so far, shall we say. You've brought a couple of different angles to it. What do you think the current Black Lives Matter discussion is missing at the moment?
I think it's missing, if I had to say something, I would say a solid plan What I would like to see, I'm sorry.
Is that your battery going low?
It is. Hold on. I'm just going to hook this up to the charger. I would actually like to see, I'm a bit old school, David. I would actually like to see some type of protest. Not protest in, no, not protest, boycott. I would like to actually see some boycott. Like a economic boycott of sort. Even if it meant no spending for, I don't know, a certain period of time. Because I feel that if we know statistically that the culture spends so much money, the Black community spends X amount of dollars, I think there are statistically numbers of how much money is spent. I think there was something that was done, and I think it might have just been like one day or something. I don't know. But I think that it has to be more than one day. And I think it should be something substantial. That's just what I think. Something that would make an impact. Because I think money talks, but that's just what I think. Because when people won't listen to anything else, they tend to listen when profits are impacted. They tend to listen when their bottom line is hit. They tend to listen when sponsors are dropped. You know, but that's just me. I don't know if that's the answer or not, but that's just what I think. I know that a lot of marketing is done specifically towards the Black community. And I know that that's done strategically for that reason, because so much money is spent in that area. So I just feel that if the opposite can be done, it would just have more of an impact.
Mm-hmm. I've always said a similar thing about climate change, actually, that if you really want to do something about it and change it, you have to change the economics of it. Because as long as fossil fuels are profitable, we will keep on extracting them, using them. Whereas when you are able to make, say, oil and gas economically unviable, and you can do that through a variety of ways, and you make green energy economically viable, as soon as there's profit in it, like, it will change overnight. As soon as green energy becomes a smarter economic choice than non-green energy, like, climate change will no longer be a thing. It will change overnight because, as you said, money talks. And I think you're the first person I've heard who's talked about an economic side. I think everyone's approached this from like a moral or a social or even like a political aspect. But I'm inclined to agree with you and say that actually, if you get an economic basis in this, if you get financial pressure, like, yeah, as soon as there's money involved, like, stuff starts to happen, as you say.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because, I mean, it's no secret that businessmen specifically target that market. I mean, if you look at the Black community and you look at where they place certain businesses, where they place the liquor stores, where they place just different I don't know, just the predatory spending practices. I'll put it like that. Mm-hmm. The impulse spending. There's whole sets of marketing practices built around the Black community. So you can't tell me that research hasn't been done to support these numbers. And that's not my specialty, but that's just from what I know. And it's not even my specialty, but it's just what I notice. We're the only ones that do certain things. And I mean, that's not a stereotype, but there are certain things that only we do. And there are a lot of people that have become rich simply because of the way we spend money. But we haven't become rich from any other culture. So that if we stop spending money, there are other people that will be impacted. And I think that if we stop spending money, then those people will start paying attention. And then maybe the issue will become important. And so for me, there's nothing that I spend money on that I can't stop spending money on. So I can do with just my basic groceries and, food and shelter or whatever, for a certain amount of time, just to make a point that this is just that important to me. So I think that's what's necessary, but I don't know. I mean, that's just what I think. I don't know.
There's something interesting that you're raising there that kind of I'm perking up a little bit as I'm listening to this idea that there are businesses and industries that are kind of targeted at the Black community. And I'm going to ask for the benefit of myself, and I'm sure I'll be asking for the benefit of people who are in the same position as me. So you mentioned like liquor stores, for example. I'm guessing that they put more liquor stores in neighborhoods that are predominantly Black. Have you got more examples of like these types of businesses and industries? Because it's something that I've never heard of. So I'd be interested to find out a little bit more.
So you have liquor stores, you have what's called payday. I think they still have like payday loans, like
short-term loans.
Yeah, short-term loans, like check cashing places. You have the beauty supply places that sell like beauty supply products for like your hair. You have things that are, it's so deep. It's really deep to me when I think about it, because these are things that I kind of think about. I think that the way that I can put it in a nutshell is that this is how I put it to my children. We have a culture that has been taught to hate itself, David. Okay. A culture that was taught from the very beginning to hate itself. We come from a people that was taken from somewhere else, and we were lied to from the very beginning. We were not savages. We were a functioning civilization. Okay. So that was all a lie. We were not slaves. We were made to be slaves. Okay. At one point, Black people were kings and queens. Okay. We were not a bunch of savages running around uncivilized that were just snatched up. Okay. That was a lie. So when you lie to a culture of people and you bring them to a place and you tell them that they are the savages and you tell them that you are inherently evil, you are inherently lazy, you inherently are thieves, and you tell them this over and over as children, then unless you have strong parents to tell you otherwise, you will believe this. When in actuality, if your parents don't teach you that you actually come from kings and queens and teach you that this is not who you are, then you grow up thinking that that's who you are, okay? You grow up thinking that you have no value because no one has ever taught you who you are. So if you automatically hate yourself, you're going to grow up spending money that you don't have every time you get it. You're going to spend money on things like hair, makeup, waist trainers, eyelashes. And there's nothing wrong with that, David, if you have taken care of what you're supposed to take care of. But sometimes we have a culture of people that even if I haven't taken care of what I'm supposed to take care of, I'm going to look like I have because I may hate myself, okay? And I'm going to try to word this carefully because not everybody hates themselves. But sometimes if you're taught to hate yourself, you may not have something in you that teaches you not to hate the person that you're about to kill that looks like you. Because if you hate yourself, you don't love him because you hate yourself. He's you. If you hate yourself, you're going to try to overcompensate with clothes and things and Michael Jordan tennis shoes that you know you can't afford because you're going to constantly overcompensate. And somebody is going to market that because in marketing class, they're teaching their rich friends classes that specifically say that there is a market out there for people that chase a carrot that can never be caught. And there's a lot of money out there to be made. And we're going to get that money from them. Okay? So, me and my rich friends are going to have classes and we're going to capitalize off of your self-hatred. Okay? Because we taught you to hate yourself in the first place. So not only did we teach you how to hate yourself, we're now going to get rich off of you hating yourself. And David, a lot of that is the problem. We have cultures that clash, and it's so deep when you really think about it, because then you have charities that say, I'm going to help you, but I'm not going to send you to college. I'm just going to give you toys. And I've always thought to myself, if you really want to help people, give them tuition, give them a way out. Why are you giving them toys? So David, I think to myself, okay, so do you really want to help them, or do you just want to feel better about yourself? So then I think to myself, maybe I just want to feel better, because I want you here, but I don't want you here with my son. See, my son's here. It's okay for you to be here, so I'm just going to give you toys. But I don't want you here. Because ideally, if I really wanted to help you, I'd give you tuition to help you come up out of what you're in, if I really wanted to help you. That's why when I help people, David, one of the things that I do is I feel like everybody can serve. You don't have to fill out one piece of paperwork if I help you, but you have to volunteer, because I feel that there's a principle at stake. Nothing is for free, but you can serve. So it takes people out of that victim mindset. It gets you out of that mindset of thinking that I'm here to rescue you, because I'm not here to rescue you. I'm here to help you help yourself. I don't want to just help you get toys for your child at Christmas. I want you to be able to do something for your child in March, April, in May, in June, whenever you feel like doing something for your child. Because it shouldn't be up to me to do something for your child and to feel great about it just once a year, to come in and rescue you and feel great about it and then go home and not worry about what happens to you and your child the rest of the year. Because you could be evicted 2 months from now and out on the streets. But I'm at home warm with my children. That's not helping you. But I gave you a bike at Christmas time. That's not okay with me. No. That helped me feel better, because I gave my kid $5,000 worth of toys. And that's not okay with me. That just helped me. That helped my conscience feel better for giving my kid way too much stuff that he's just totally ungrateful for. So that's how I feel about that. And I think it's we could go down a rabbit hole, David. It's so many, it's so deep, David. It's so deep. It's so deep to me that I think to myself that we've all got a part in it. You know, we've got, the churches have a part in it. The churches, we all have a part in it, and we all have to fix it. We have to fix it. We've got to teach these kids to love themselves and stop victimizing them. Stop making them feel like they're victims. And we've got to empower these kids. Because if you don't, because you can't complain about poor people and treat them like victims. You can't have it both ways. You just can't. You can't keep calling people lazy and saying they need to get up and get a job, but then you don't want to hire them. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
No.
On the subject of help, Charletta, for white supporters of Black Lives Matter who want to help, they want to make a difference, they don't just want to do the toys at Christmas, the sort of empty gestures that you've been talking about, what type of things would you suggest that are actually going to make a meaningful contribution?
I think that they should get involved with organizations that they're familiar with. I think that white supporters should kind of do their due diligence in the organizations that they support. Because I think that way too much money is being donated to organizations that people don't know where the money is going. And I'm sorry. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm sure that if people can say, if you ask them where the money's going, they can tell you. But I just feel that if you're asking me, I think that people should do their due diligence and get involved with organizations. Nowadays, it's easier than ever to get involved with organizations that you want to donate to. Because we have to make the connection. We have to make the connection. The money has to get to where it's going to make a difference, because obviously the connection is not being made. There's just too many children that are not being helped, and there's a gap somewhere.
You were talking about having a plan earlier, and your plan A, B, C, D, E through the alphabet. And I think awareness and talking is good and helpful, but at the end of the day, there's got to be some real outcomes that come out of that. Are there any solutions that you would like to see come in place? What are some of the things that you would like to see change that you think we can actually do something about at this moment in time?
For the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, for Black people in general. Yeah, for Black people in general, we don't have to attach it to Black Lives Matter.
I think that in general, we just all need to be intentional. I think that I saw the phrase anti-racist,
yeah.
Yeah. And I hadn't seen that before this year. And I thought that was interesting, because it was basically letting people know that you have to be more than just not being racist. Like, you have to actually be against it. Because I think what people have to understand is that the people that are racist, they're pretty adamant, and they're pretty outspoken, and they're pretty loud, and they're determined to be who they are. And the people that are against racism are kind of quiet and just go on about life. So I think we have to be intentional in regards to, in our everyday life, when we see something, we have to say something. when it's our friends and when it's our family, we have to confront it. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It could just be something as simple as when somebody says something that's wrong. Sometimes we just need to call them out on it. We just need to be bold enough to say, that's not right. That's not right. Because I think people need to know where we stand. And sometimes we're too complacent. We're too quiet. And silence gives us, it gives people that permission to continue and how they feel about it. And we just need to be able to let people know in no uncertain terms that this is not okay. I think we're past the day when we could just laugh it off like it used to be. When we all know when that day was, when people would say things and we just kind of look around like, oh, how they are, And we could just afford to kind of just be like, I don't even want to get into it with them. How they are. They don't really mean anything by it. And as long as I don't say anything, or as long as I don't laugh, I don't feel that way, but as long as I don't laugh, I'm just going to ignore it. I kind of think we're past that point now, because I think that it's too late for that. I think we are now at the point where people are so bold now that we have to be that person to say, that's not okay. And I'm not saying get into a confrontation, but I'm just saying that we have to just now be the type of person to just say, no, that's not okay. Mm-hmm. And I've got resources where I've done research on books, podcasts, literature to make it easier for people. If, for people that want to know more to strengthen their stance, not that I would want anyone to feel like they need to argue their point, but sometimes I do think that people, they may want to feel like they want to be empowered to strengthen their argument or their stance. And if that's the case, I've got resources. I've got information that people can read and learn and educate themselves on. Not that, if you don't want to, that's fine. But if there is a desire to want to know more, then I've made it my business to seek out this information just so that I can make it available for people that do want that. But again, I'm not saying that a person has to become this advocate. That's not my place to tell people that they have to do that. My place is basically to say, if a person wants that information, my mission is to be a source to make that available to people who want that.
Mm-hmm. We can include all those in the show notes, Charletta. I'll pop them in when I do the description for this episode. I want to try and bring everything that we've been talking about sort of full circle and round off our conversation today. And to do this, I'd actually like to give you the last question. So I've been asking the question through this interview, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask a question. It's a question. You've got two choices. A question that you'd like to ask our audience today, or a question you think the audience should be asking themselves. Do you have a question you'd like to share with us?
I think that's a good one. Let me think. I want to ask your audience, how can someone like myself help? What is it that someone like you would find helpful? Because I'm always trying to find out what is the most helpful. When I do a podcast like this, David, my goal is to educate, to enlighten, to just try to help people connect. So I'm always just trying to find out what people find useful, what people need, or how can I help. So I think my question for your audience would be, in a future podcast, or what would you find helpful? How can I help? How can I help? That's what my question would be.
So for our audience today who've been listening and they've connected with your story, they've resonated with some of the things that you've shared, and they want to find out a little bit more about who you are and what you do. As I said, we can include some of those resources you were talking about. But is there anywhere else that you'd like to direct our audience so that they can contact you, find out a little bit more about you?
Something flying around. Sorry. I'm sorry.
We have a visitor to the podcast. A mosquito of some kind.
They can contact me. They can contact me at. They can call me if they like at 636-795-2163. Or they can email me at charlettataylor01@gmail.com. And they can reach me at those two. That's probably the quickest way to contact me. And I will definitely get back to them. I can, that's the quickest way to reach me. Definitely the quickest way to reach me. I can help in any way that I can answer any questions that they have regarding this podcast, anything that wasn't clear. I work with churches, ministries to help train volunteers in their diversity programs. I can set up workshops. Sometimes I do let's see here. Sometimes I even do like the anti-racism workshops, but I do those for maybe groups of 10 or more. I do those over Zoom. And then you will include the resources, like the reading list. I'll get that to you. And if anyone would like a consultation, like for coaching or anything like that, you can call me and we can maybe set up something for maybe 15 minutes and I can let you know how I can help in that area as well. So I'm here to help any way that I can.
Excellent. Well, Charletta, I want to thank you for joining us today. I've particularly noted how you have this wonderful mixture of being passionate and calm at the same time. Like you'll be talking about something you're clearly passionate about, but you seem to do it in such like a measured, relaxed way. It's this wonderful balance that you have, and I've noticed it throughout our conversation. It's something that sort of particularly stood out to me. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that and thank you for bringing such a lovely balance into our conversation today.
Thank you, David. I really enjoyed it. I did. This is something that I'm really passionate about because I just want the best for everyone. I just think that there's so much greatness out here. I really do, especially for our children. I just want our children to grow and to just be the best that they can be. So I think that of all the gifts that the world has waiting for them and these kids, and I just want them to live it out. And sometimes I think about it in terms of you just never know who has the answer to what. You don't know if one of these children has the answer to an incurable disease. You don't know if your loved one has, think about it this way, if your loved one has an incurable disease, what if one of the children that you're discriminating against or that you hate, what if one of these babies has the answer? What if their mind has the cure to that disease? You know what I'm saying? We need each other. We really need each other because there's so many gifted children in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Charletta, for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be. Because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.